Mr. Feld, please continue.
Yes. My thanks to you, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Ranking Member, and the subcommittee. I am Legal Director of Public Knowledge. I am pleased to speak to you this morning on behalf of the Public Interest Spectrum Coalition about buttons and buttonholes. Buttons are tangible objects. They are things that people easily understand and think about. Buttonholes are a designated empty space. Most people don't think about the importance of buttonholes when they're buttoning their clothes, but without those empty spaces, you're not going to keep your coat closed. You need both. That's what I'm here to talk about in terms of spectrum policy, which is the empty spaces in the spectrum, the white spaces, particularly in the broadcast spectrum. The policy objectives that we've all talked about here today of encouraging innovation, increasing economic activity, which helps to reduce the deficit, as well as improving all of our lives. All of these things are critically important, and we can achieve them, but we must not look at this just through the lens of a Congressional Budget Office score. In fact, I will state further that if we focus only on raising revenue, or more precisely, what we think sitting here now, years out from an auction, a very complicated structure that we think will raise revenue, the spectrum crisis will become a spectrum Armageddon, resulting in higher costs, stifled innovation, and reduced global competitiveness. The worst thing that could happen is, what if they gave an incentive auction and nobody came because we structured it poorly? White spaces are unique in spectrum policy. They've been enthusiastically supported by Republican FCC chairmen and commissioners and today's Democratic chairmen and commissioners. White spaces exist without preconceived uses and so are open to any entrepreneur or technologist with a good idea. They are the most deregulatory approach to spectrum policy we have. As FCC Commissioner McDowell said, the Commission's actions approving TV white spaces help to bring more broadband to consumers as quickly as innovation rather than as quickly as government will allow. The results have been spectacular for the U.S. economy. The short history of unlicensed spectrum has allowed the development of what were considered junk bands to yield tens of billions of dollars in economic gains and activities. The unlicensed spectrum now being considered in the prime broadcast bands promises to surpass that previous success. This is truly unlicensed 4G. Allowing for additional allocation of national unlicensed spectrum under the 1 gigahertz band with its superior characteristics of penetration and long distance, allow for the creation of gigabit capacity wireless LANs in offices, schools, high-density residential areas, mesh networks capable of many miles of coverage at a fraction of the cost of current Wi-Fi technology. Such gains don't show up in a CBO score, but they result in increased revenues for the federal government through investment, job creation, and economic productivity on an annual basis. Rural areas will be able to be served with high-capacity wireless broadband service. Low barriers to entry for unlicensed allow these rural providers to serve their communities without winning licenses at auction, which they cannot afford to do. Indeed, areas that cannot be profitably served with licensed spectrum because of the cost of winning licenses are now being served with existing Wi-Fi without universal service subsidies, and will be better served and more broadly served with white spaces spectrum. Already we are starting to see the fruits of projects like these in places as diverse as Claudeville, Virginia, with a population of 916, to the much larger city of Houston. In order for this future to come about, for there to be a spectrum for smart grid coordination, machine-to-machine communication, inventory tracking, and the rest, Congress has to make certain that the white spaces are protected by giving the FCC discretion in structuring and conducting auctions. The investors and companies that are building this technology today must believe there is a future for this here in the United States. The United Kingdom is also looking at white spaces technology, as are China and Brazil, and if investors and companies do not believe there is a future here for this innovative new technology, they will take their investment and their jobs elsewhere. Providing the FCC flexible authority to conduct incentive auctions and allowing the agency to pursue a broad approach to spectrum policy that is not exclusively tied to raising revenue will be the most effective means of promoting broadband, job creation, and economic growth. I just want to add that this is not an either-or. Rarely in policy do we have a chance to have it all. We can keep broadcasting as a vital service for this country. We can have significant new license for auction, and we can have a vibrant white spaces which will provide us with exciting new technologies for the benefit of all Americans. Mr. Brenner just says he doesn't have a technology right now that would allow them to increase their capacity by 35 times. I don't have one either, but by creating a test bed, a place where these technologies can develop at very low cost and be deployed quickly and effectively, such as the white spaces, I have a very good suspicion of where that technology will come from. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.